Buenos dias! Welcome to another episode of Reading with Pak Steven. Yes, I am wearing a Mexican sombrero, and yes, it's very big, and yes, it's very uncomfortable, so I'm not going to read the story wearing this hat. Mr. Ted's super jealous, and he wants to wear the sombrero. There you go, Mr. Ted, enjoy. Well, boys and girls, I have a very interesting story for you. It's set in Australia, and it's a long story. So you might need to settle back, get your drink, some popcorn, maybe a sandwich, and get ready for this week's story. And this story is called, Are We There Yet? And the author is Alison Lester, and it's a journey around Australia. So you're going to learn all about Australia. And there it is. And Sydney is where I come from. I spent most of my life in Darwin. And I have 2 children in Sydney and 1 child just north of Brisbane. Starting out. This year I turned 8. Mum and Dad took us on a trip around Australia. Luke, Billy and I missed school for the whole winter term. Nan and Papa stayed behind to look after Buffy and Tigger and Bess. And there's Buffy. We towed Papa's old camper trailer, and it was our home for 3 months. It folded out to make a little house with a table, a refrigerator, 2 double beds, a stove, a sink. It had everything we needed. Luke slept in his swag under the stars, except when it rained, and then he bunked in with us. We were squashed, but it was cozy. The day we left, I helped Nan pin up a big map of Australia so she and Papa could follow our journey. I wish I was coming, Grace, Nan said, and she hugged me tight. I'm going to miss our cuddles. So I think that's the journey they're going to go on there. It's their camper vans. They're going to tow it behind a car. And they're going to go all the way around Australia. And it says that they live here, which is between Melbourne and Adelaide. On the road at last. I waved to Nan and Papa until Dad turned on the road leading out to the highway. I felt sad and excited at the same time. Nobody said anything for ages, not until we reached the coast. Then the Coomeraung, Luke made us laugh. Look, he said, a pelican. Its beak can hold more than its belly can. We saw the last autumn leaves fluttering like flags on the grapevines of the Barossa Valley. On our first night we camped on the edge of the Flinders Ranges. It felt like we were the only people in the world. You know, one of the things about Australia is that there's lots of places where there's not many people. It's a very, very big country, but the people are not everywhere. So there's lots of places you can go and there's nobody there. At Streaky Bay, we stuck our heads in the mouth of a great white shark. Ooh. We made letters with our shadows at Murphy's haystack. The giant boulders glowed in the afternoon sun. That evening at the camping ground, Mum said Billy had to use the women's bathroom because he was so little. He was embarrassed. Okay, he said, but if anyone comes in, call me Kylie. We drove past the wheat silos and windmills, and Billy said, Are we there yet? Uh-oh. Only the second day, and he's worried about if we're there yet. It took 2 days to cross the Nullarbor Plain. I waved to the people in the passing cars and trucks, and they waved back. That'd be me sleeping in the car. We all had our favourite positions in the car. And there's the mum. She likes to be in the back to read the book. The Great Australian Bite looked like a giant had bitten a huge chunk out of Australia. Dad and Luke stood right on the edge of the cliff, but Mum stayed back. She held on to Billy and me so tight that my hand went numb. "Ooh," she said, "I can't look." It's very, very high up. It is a little bit dangerous. At the head of Bite, we saw 10 whales in the sea below us. A mother and a calf were rolling and wallowing together. Their mournful music sounded like an underwater orchestra. "It's making me sleepy," I said to Mum. "They must be singing a whale lullaby." Wow, this is the Great Australian Bite this year. And there's lots of whales and dolphins and things to see. Ooh. Over the desert and into the west. At Eucla, we had sandy sandwiches near the ruins of the old telegraph station. Next day we travelled for nearly 150 kilometres on a dead straight road. Dad pretended to drive with his eyes closed, but I could tell he was peeping. Luke surfed up on the stone at Wave Rock, but Dad waited for the real waves at Rock Nest Island. The quokkas came so close to me, I could see their tiny whiskers. Quokkas are like little possums. Yeah, an Australian animal. After Perth, we went to the pinnacles. They poked up through the sand like giant gemstone fingers. It was so windy at Geraldton that the trees grew sideways. Wow. We drove past the pink tapestry of wildflowers, and Billy said, "Are we there yet?" This is fun, climbing in trees. I used to do that too when I was little. The further north we travelled, the hotter it became. We stood in the shallows at Monkey Maya to see the dolphins. "Too crowded," said Dad. "I liked it better when it was just us and the whales." So at Monkey Maya, you stand in the water and the dolphins come and you can pat them. Mum made me wear my hat all the time. Hats and sunscreen, she'd say every time we stopped. "This sun will burn you to a crisp." That afternoon, Mum and Billy and I had a picnic on the dunes, then fell asleep like a pride of lions. Later, when we went for a dip, a dolphin came up so close and swam right between us. Wow, that'll be fun. We went snorkeling at Turquoise Bay. A gentle current carried us over the coral reef as though the ocean was giving us a tour. There were so many fish, like sparkling jewels. My favourite were all the tiny blue angels. Wow, that is beautiful, isn't it? Have you ever been snorkeling? I enjoy snorkeling. I went to Monado once and went snorkeling. The outback. At Broome, we ate crunchy fish and chips and watched the moon reflected in the mudflaps of Roebuck Bay. It's called the Staircase to the Moon. The next day we camped at Widgeonah Gorge. Mum loved the boab trees. They look like opera singers, she said. Dad and Luke called them upside down trees. We flew over the bungle bungles in a helicopter without any doors, and my stomach turned inside. "I can't look," said Mum again. These funny trees are called bulb trees, and they do look like they've been tipped upside down because they don't have many leaves. Look like all roots everywhere. At Tunnel Creek, we waded through an underground river. The dark water came right up to my armpits when something slimy slid past my leg. I screamed. Luke said, "Don't be such a baby." Heading south on the Tanami track, the sand was so deep our car got bogged. Everyone felt hot and grouchy, and Mum was worried we'd be stranded in the desert. Luke found a tiny thorny devil, standing fierce as a dragon, and that cheered us up. That's the thorny devil. This is like a type of lizard. A football team helped push us out, and Billy said, "Are we there yet?" At Alice Springs, we stayed with Mum's friend Ruth. These days were hot, but the nights were freezing. Ruth took us to her school, and a teacher showed Mum and me how to dig for witchetty grubs. They tasted like egg yolk, runny and delicious, with a crunchy head and a wiggly legs. Mum couldn't try one. "No, thank you," she said. "I'm still full from breakfast." Well, I don't think I would eat them either. Luke and Billy played footy with some of the local boys. That afternoon, we drove out to see Uluru. Dad spotted it first, when we were still 35 kilometers away. "Wow," he said, "that's a big rock." At sunset, we watched it change color and fade to purple. So you can see that rock, it changes color during the day. We hiked between the red domes of Katajuta. The trees whispered to us as we walked through the Valley of the Wind. Uluru is the heart of Australia, a huge red rock right in the middle of the country. One day we got up early in the cool of the morning and walked round the rock. I felt as tiny as an ant. To the top end. We floated down Catherine Gorge below towering Orca Cliffs. "This is the life," said Dad. "Just wake me up if we come to a waterfall." We drifted so slowly that even a tortoise swam past us. We stayed with our cousins in Darwin and played in their shady pool until we were as wrinkled as prunes. At night, the ceiling fans whirled constantly overhead. Even the sheets felt hot. Tiny grey geckos hunted insects on the walls. Mum and I loved the markets at Mindle Beach. There was so much yummy food, it was hard to choose. We ate satés, prawns, and drank mango smoothies, and we watched the sunset. We drove across the floodplains, past the egrets and Jabiru, and Billy said, what does he say? What is Billy going to say? "Are we there yet?" Wow, what a great adventure this family is having. Let's see where they're going to next. At Kakadu, we went on a billabong cruise. The boat drew so close to one enormous crocodile that I could count its teeth. Luke caught a huge fish in the East Alligator River. It was so big, we invited all the campers to Luke's barramundi barbecue. We swam at Gulum, and there were no saltwater crocodiles. The water was so cool and silky. Dad kept diving under and grabbing my feet, and even though I knew it was him, I screamed every time. Because in these rivers here, there's big crocodiles, and so you have to be very, very careful because they do kill people. Yeah, they do. You have to be very, very careful. Be careful if you ever go to Australia. Tony, our Kakadu guide, led us through the galleries of rock art. The sandstone overhangs were alive with animals, handprints and spirits from dreamtime. Some of the paintings were more than 20,000 years old. One small handprint looked just like mine. Wow. How are you going? This is a very long story, isn't it? I think it's our longest one yet. The far north. We travelled on the Barkly Highway. We caught up with a big mob of cattle. We stopped to share our cool water with the dusty drovers, and the boss let me ride his horse for a little while. Taffy was the same colour as Bess and just as gentle but twice as tall. At the circus at Mount Isa, an elephant ate my mum's horrible hat. She swapped it off my head with her trunk and scoffed it. "Thank you, elephant," I shouted. She didn't like the hat, did she? Dad bought me near Konkari, the flying doctor's plane flew over us. We invented patience for him, and Luke had the best idea. A drover got bucked off his horse and landed on a spiny anteater. Ooh. Oh no. Dad bought me a new hat at the Mariba Rodeo. You look like a real cowgirl, Gracie, said Mum. We met an old stockman who taught us how to crack a whip. He showed Luke how it twists the cracker. That night, Billy and I rode our Broncos until they couldn't buck anymore. The next morning, we drove through the shady green rainforest, and Billy said, "Are we there yet?" In far north Queensland, we walked the Daintree River. Giant butterflies landed on Mum's blue t-shirt. "They think you're a beautiful flower, Mum," said Billy. The Great Barrier Reef was a swirling underwater carnival of fish and coral. Luke found a snake-shaped piece of mangrove wood, and he carved it into a walking stick for Papa. "I can't look," said Mum again. Wow, isn't it beautiful? We went beach combing at Cowes Bay, where the jungle came right down to the sand. Mum and I made a shell mermaid together. "When the tide comes in tonight, she'll swim out to sea," said Dad. I imagined her out there, riding her dolphin like an ocean cowgirl. Oh, so beautiful. Do you like collecting shells on the beach? Yeah, I do too. Heading south. In Cairns, we spent all our time at the pool. One day, Mum crashed into Billy on the water slide and got banned for the whole afternoon. At Hitchinbrook Island, we hiked for hours to swim at Mulligan's Falls. That evening, we were so tired and sore, we all needed a back rub. We left the coast and drove inland to visit our friends at Miles. We all helped on the farm, and Luke had a go at shearing. The sheep looked skinny and embarrassed with that anymore. They get that and they shave all the wool off the sheep. That's how we get some of our clothes. At Surfers Paradise, we drove a scary bungee ride. "Ow!" moaned Dad as he catapulted up. "I can't look." But Mum laughed as she spun up through the lights. "I can look," she shouted. Because normally she says she can't look. Later that week, we caught heaps of fish off the jetty at Foster. Boats skimmed across the sea as we drove down the coast. And Billy said, "That's right, are we there yet?" When we got to Sydney, we parked our van in Uncle Pete's garden. Next day at the zoo, a baby elephant stared hungrily at my hat, so I ran. "No way," I yelled, "I like this hat." Uncle Pete's dog Bongo towed Luke all the way along Bondi Beach. That looks like fun, doesn't it? One day we went bushwalking in the Blue Mountains. Oil evaporating from the eucalyptus trees made the blue haze. Mum and I imagined the kind of clothes the three sisters would wear. The three sisters are actually rocks, so they're just being funny there. Our last night at Sydney, we had a picnic overlooking the harbour. Cascading fireworks exploded across the sky, and their reflections shimmered on the water. It felt like a farewell display, just for us. The cold country. On our way to the mountains, we stopped at Canberra and spent a whole day visiting the galleries. Mum and I always liked the same paintings. Winter had arrived in the south and was freezing at Mount Hotham. Billy and Luke and I had never seen snow before. We caught snowflakes in our mouths and we wore socks on our hands just to keep warm. Billy made a Ned Kelly helmet at Glenwarren. "Bail up," he said. "I'm a bushranger." He crossed Bass Strait on a big red ferry. The sea was so rough, we all felt sick. Luke turned pale green. I'll bet you he would. I get seasick too. In Hobart Museum, he saw a stuffed Tasmanian tiger. I felt so sad to think they were extinct. You know what extinct means? No more. You can't find Tasmanian tigers anymore. Mum tried to cheer me up. You never know, Gracie, she said. There might still be a tiger family in the bush. When we were hiking at Cradle Mountain, I kept looking for a tiger tracks. It rained so much we played Monopoly for hours. Luke always won, even when Dad and Billy and I ganged up on him. At the end of the week, we drove back to the ferry, and Billy said, what did he say? Are we there yet? Wilson's Promontory is the most southerly part of the Australian mainland, and I found a paper Nautilus there, washed up at the squeaky beach. One evening at Phillips Island, we watched little penguins surf ashore, then waddle up the beach like tiny explorers. I love penguins, don't you? Melbourne was crowded and fast after camping at the beach. The traffic noise kept me awake at night. We learnt to juggle at St Kilda. This is a really fun place to go, St Kilda. On the last day of our trip, Dad got up early. As we drove away from the city, I looked back at the dawn through the sleepy eyes. Winding along the Great Ocean Road, we stopped to look at the 12 apostles standing in the surf. The sea was wild and foaming, and we were nearly home. See, they call these rocks the 12 apostles. They're nearly home. Finally, we were back at our house. Buffy was so pleased to see us, she jumped right into the car. I cuddled Tiger and called out to Bess. It was good to hear her whining back. Billy woke up and said, are we there yet? And we were. We were home. What an amazing story. Very long, but amazing. Now, boys and girls, you see me out the front, but behind the scene we have people who help with our recording. We have Pa Rio and we have Pa Joshua. And today is Pa Joshua's last day of working on recording our videos. So I want to say a huge thank you to Pa Joshua, and we wish him all the very, very best on his next adventures. So thank you so much, Pa Joshua, for all the video recording. And I look forward to seeing you all next time on, what is it, Ted? That's right, Reading with Pa Steven.